Let's talk about government power spending with this next story. From the Daily Mail, revealed Fauci is America's highest paid federal employee on $417,608 salary after joking in an interview with Matt McConaughey that he was just a government worker on a government salary. So
how do I get one of those government salaries? Seriously? Gosh.
They say Fauci is the nation's highest paid federal employee, raking in $417,000 in 2019, which is the latest year that federal salary data is available. He made more than the president's $400,000 a year salary, In 2019, he also made more than Mike Pence, who outranks Fauci in authority, and made $235,100 in salary, as well as Dr. Deborah Birx, who made $305,000. If Fauci remains in this position and doesn't get a raise, he'll make $2.5 million from 2019 through 2024. I don't know why they picked those years, but I guess it's because of the next term. Data shows that the highest federal employees were medical and dental officers. Why are we paying? Look, you can talk about Dr. Fauci and his right or wrong and lockdowns and all that stuff, but why are we paying these people so much money? And it's not just about Fauci. It's about just all of these people in general getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from the taxpayer for what?
Because they're friends with the people that make the rules, that dole out the finance, and it's free money for them because it's tax money. They don't have to know us to take our money. They just get it.
So that's funny, though, because I thought those numbers would be even worse, because at the state and local level, like at the university level, a university president, at least at where I went, UMass, makes north of $650,000, right? The basketball coach at UMass, which sucked and lost most of its games, made $1 million when I was there. He made more than the president, and these are all government employees. Made more than the governor of Massachusetts.
It's a public
institution. These are all taxpayer funded. And so, if you can't succeed in business, go to government, and because they actually, the funny thing about government is how they advance and how they do raises is not based on merit. It's literally just based.
All right. I'll say this: tax money going to these people to pay them exorbitant salaries is theft.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I've been working on you for a while. We did it, folks. Yes. Yeah, celebrate. Tim finally admitted it.
Because I think the idea of taxing is fine. The problem is when the government's corrupt, then it's not being used for what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be used for. You can make all the arguments in the world that I hear from the left about taxes are good. It's like paying a subscription to receive the roads and the safety and the clean water. And I'm like, sure, if that's what it was used for. Am I supposed? Look, I got no problem with taxes. I have no problem with the concept of paying taxes. The problem I have is how much is going to blow up kids? How much is going to pay this dude's salary for the basketball team? Which is point. Like, why are you getting $1 million?
But that's the thing, is in concept that makes sense. But government is always going to be corrupt. Show me the government that isn't corrupt. Government power, centralized power, by its very nature, corrupts even good people. Though good people are usually not drawn to high office and running for power. This is public choice theory in economics. It self-selects for the people that are the most ambitious and most ruthless. They're the only ones that can get to the top of the food chain. So government corruption is not a bug. It is the system.
Yeah. Very good point that you made there. Now, there are some people arguing that we should pay politicians and government officials a high amount so they don't get bribed by special interests. But this definitely seems exorbitant, to say the least. Dr. Fauci, I mean, I'm definitely not a fan of him, especially everything he did at the Wuhan laboratory, specifically trying to make coronavirus as lethal as it could be with the gain-of-function data studies. But, you know, there's an argument to be made that you don't want these people working for other interests. But as I've been arguing against that, saying, you know, money corrupts individuals and you never have enough. So even if you do pay them a lot, you know, what's the middle ground here? Where do we meet in the middle to make sure that they're satisfied and that they're not corrupt? Because, I mean, essentially, let's ask ourselves, what did Dr. Fauci do? I mean, he's repeating a lot of the World Health Organization kind of directives and talking points, but those keep flip-flopping all the time. A lot of the projections were wrong. I think it's very fair to say that the United States handling of this entire situation has been extremely poor. So when you have something that is not done right, you shouldn't be paying top dollar for it.
Well, and that's the problem is with businesses, if they mess up and then guess what? They go
out
under.
of business.
Or if an employee messes up big time, they get fired. But think about it like this. The CDC literally blocked all COVID testing at the beginning and said you can only use our test, right? But then their test didn't work. And it took them months before they allowed private labs to go and make tests again. The CDC did not lose any money from their budget from that.
Exactly.
They didn't get cut. They didn't get shrunk. Like a private business that bombed that bad would probably go out of business or be boycotted.
Or even Dr. Fauci that told you that masks are bad, that you shouldn't wear masks. Dr. Fauci literally was telling you that, flip-flopping all the time under the directives of the World Health Organization, which he just a couple days ago was very excited that the United States is going to be back a part of and financing and funding, even though they don't even recognize Taiwan as a country, which is absolutely ridiculous.
We also have to talk about the Fauci fetish. Like the media and some of the liberals, not like some people just like him, right? But some people have gotten like culty with it.
Yeah.
Like they have like Fauci. I've seen Fauci sex toys.
Oh my God.
Yes. I've seen like glowing profiles of him about how he's like a stud and and all these memes that are like sort of joking,
the
sexualizing
sex toy
Fauci.
screws you over, literally and figuratively.
You guys sense this like cult worship where like, who's the new?
It's like Greta Thunberg 2.0.
Who's the new celebrity? It's this guy Fauci. They're like, oh, it's this guy. Oh no, now it's Kamala Harris. Let's worship Kamala Harris.
Well, to be fair, Brad Pitt did play Dr. Fauci on SNL.
Good for him.
So, I mean, if you're looking at those kind of accreditations, you don't have much accreditation. What did Dr. Fauci do during this entire saga that we've been through that actually made a positive impact into the coronavirus? I mean, that's a serious, legitimate question that we need to be asking, especially if he's getting paid that much. I mean, can you name anything noble or great that he's done with the coronavirus other than just repeat World Health Organization talking points and contradict himself all the time?
Well, we don't know what he's done behind the scenes. And I imagine he seems like a good guy. I think he's done his best. And it was like a super horrible position to be in, right? No one knew how to handle it. But no one can say he didn't make a ton of mistakes. He did. And we should be allowed to point those out and ask what the consequences are.
Yeah. Is there going to be any accountability? Is there going to be any way to get, justice for some of the larger consequences that are leading because of very bad government mistakes that have hurt
here's
people.
the thing that bothers me the most about Fauci and some of these other public health people is they were saying they changed their tune and then they act like they never did. So, for example, you mentioned masks, and that's a good one, but also schools.
Yeah.
Schools, Rand Paul and a bunch of other people, and science was showing this too in other countries, that reopening schools was perfectly safe and fine. And Fauci and other people were totally against it. And then they just pivoted. A month or two ago, they've really pivoted hardcore since the election and about lockdowns. And that's what I can't stand, is I feel a little gaslit by it all.
Yep.
You may have heard some chiming. I don't know if that was coming through on the podcast, but it was because I was scouring the web to try and find that story about Fauci and the research, and I got it to Newsweek.com. Dr. Fauci backed controversial Wuhan lab with U.S. dollars for risky coronavirus research. Is Newsweek.
How have I never heard that?
This is Newsweek.com.
That tells you that a lot, that I've never heard that story.
From April 28th of last year, they say Dr. Fauci is an advisor to Trump, yada, yada. Last year, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, led by Fauci, funded scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and other institutions for work on gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses.
Yeah. Well,
what?
Well, the particular bats that are in question here that many scientists and experts point to leading to the coronavirus are thousands of miles away from Wuhan. So the possibility of these bats traveling specifically to Wuhan is extremely improbable. Now, we have any empirical evidence showing that there's a direct link to this? No. But there's a crap ton of circumstantial evidence highlighting exactly that there could have been an accidental leak in the Wuhan laboratory.
People were selling them. People were taking animals to the wet markets. That's what they're saying. There is, from, I think, New York Mag, what they call the lab leak hypothesis. We don't know for sure.
Exactly. We don't know for sure, but there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that a lot of experts are looking at and pointing to and saying they were literally working on making the coronavirus jump from species to species, making it as dangerous as possible. This is where the term gain of function comes from. This is what Dr. Fauci was literally in charge of bankrolling, before the coronavirus.
So
and the United States, there was even diplomatic leaked cables saying that there's a high probability of a virus leaking from this Wuhan laboratory before the coronavirus leaked.
And just to clarify, This is from The Intelligencer, New York Mag, the lab leak hypothesis. For decades, scientists have been hot-wiring viruses in hopes of preventing a pandemic, not causing one. But what if? Yeah. And that's basically what he brings up, that there are many scientists saying that essentially the hypothesis is they were trying to create vaccines and then there was a breach of some sort. But I'm not saying that's true. If you read it in the New York Mag, take it from them.
People love sometimes you need a crisis, man. We couldn't get into Syria. The weapons of mass destruction weren't quite enough. 9/11 got people riled up, but there hasn't been.
For Iraq, you mean?
Yeah, just to rally everyone to become subservient, soldiers or for the cause or whatever.
Well, the reason this is important to me, because if we could understand the origin of this sickness, we could deal with it.
So the real issue right now is China blocking the World Health Organization or the researchers who want to come in.
Around a year, China has blocked the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization that sings its praises, that says that China did an amazing job with the coronavirus. They are even being blocked from coming in. And just a few days ago, finally, after I believe 3 or 4 official, very public attempts, did China grant the World Health Organization access into the supposed wet market.
Well, China reopened the wet markets.
Yes.
That's the craziest part about all of this. These wet markets are notoriously unhygienic and dangerous for diseases and jumping. And this happened, coming from was at least the original hypothesis. They reopened them. They evidently don't care. And another thing that bothers me actually as a journalist is I see all the time China's numbers just uncritically parroted.
Yep.
Like the headline will be, China, new case numbers, has COVID under control. Or China's economic numbers, I'm particularly suspicious of. They're like, rosy economy in China as the rest of world struggles. And I'm like, you're just repeating, according to Communist Party officials.
Yep.
Well, hold on. You just said you're not going to question that? You think that those are just trustworthy figures you can just accept as fact?
Think about how many journalists in the United States all of a sudden became the cheerleaders for the U.S. intelligence apparatus when Donald Trump got elected. All of a sudden, everything the government said was true and correct all the time.
How many leftists made that switch, too? They're like... and also, they were kind of right, like decades ago, saying like the war on terror, they're infringing civil liberties, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, oh, they're spying on Trump. Heck yeah. Like,
well, that's okay. Now it's really funny because you got some lefties who are like, we mentioned the journalists with sending the troops. How dare you? Then they send in the troops to D.C. That's a good thing, and there's a good reason for it. Oh, okay.
And they're keeping them there up until March or maybe even indefinitely because of a supposed threat. Again, a threat.
It's the impeachment trial. Yeah. What did Jack Posobiec say? He's like, the military will remain occupying the city until the opposition leader's trial is over.
That's just absolutely crazy.
So I actually went into the city when this was all locked down and everything, and I had to like get an Uber to go somewhere to do something for my job, right? And he could only get me within a mile to where I needed to go because there was like not even SWAT teams, but like military trucks blocking the road and put up fences, and I had to walk the rest of the way. Like just get the Uber. I got the Uber like within a mile, and I was like, I guess I'll just walk.
What day was that?
Oh, that was like 2 days before inauguration.
Jeez.
It wasn't on inauguration day, and it wasn't even particularly close to the Capitol or anything. It was like a couple miles from there.
Have they toned down the security?
Somewhat, but so they reopened the highways and they reopened the bridges. They literally closed the bridges from Arlington to the D.C. Like you just couldn't go across. And I was like, how are people who are essential workers supposed to do that?
This shutting down of the economy and the world is really kind of crazy. My conspiratorial mind is like lit up the last few days, particularly the last few days for some reason, thinking about Wuhan and Corona, because obviously Corona's nasty.
Dude.
But where it came from, totally up for debate. And we should talk about it because bioweapons, we've been making movies about them for 20 years, and it's like it is a terrifying idea.
I just think
it's so disruptive to the world economy. I mean, it's just grinding things to a halt.
You're confusing the virus with the government.
Well, I'm thinking of the response to the virus is what I'm most concerned with.
Right. What we know about COVID is a 99.99 survival rate for people under 70 years old.
Yeah.
So the question is the government response rate. Now they're adjusting the PCR test threshold.
That was the World Health Organization that even.
Look. People have gotten sick. I know people who have gotten sick with it, and I know people who have had family members die with it.
Right.
I think the reality is never let a good crisis go to waste. It's just simple. It's the government saw an opportunity to exploit us because there was something happening.
So and government also, they never think of the unintended consequences, right? So they see the problem, they swing the hammer. Yeah. But it's like, I saw a study the other day, actually, and this was in the National Bureau of Economic Research, saying that 850,000 excess deaths will be caused from the COVID-related unemployment. And that's mostly from the lockdowns, not from the disease itself.
What is that, like over a year
over
span?
The next 15 years from suicides, from depression, from heart issues. This is a documented trend in economics that unemployment causes health issues, poverty causes health issues, and that's just one thing.
Yeah,
that's not counting
suicide,
That's not counting marital violence and domestic violence,
and the children of all the people that will affect. So if 850,000 people are going to kill themselves or die, what about all their kids?
Right.
There's another 16 million people.
But it's all these second order unintended consequences when they just looked at one thing and they didn't consider anything else, and then they refused to adapt also. That's the original, I think the original mistake you have to give some grace for. What's bothered me is the fact that they've doubled down on failed tactics. They haven't adapted.
And they got promoted for it and never held accountable for it. The other study that I saw was done by Duke, Harvard, and John Hopkins professors, and they talked about an excess of 1 million deaths coming in the future because of the longer effects of these lockdowns. And again, that's not even including the health screenings, the stoppage of cancer treatments, mental health illnesses, and a large number of economic illnesses that are going to be happening as, of course, people have to deal with the larger consequences of a failing economy, losing their jobs, losing their businesses, and having failing wages with just record medical care.
And don't forget the kids who have lost school and have it shut down. Oh, yeah. You will look back at the trends 10 years from now, and you'll see like a distinct class of children who were screwed over by this, and it will show in their lifetime success, because you can't miss a year and a half of school and just that's fine.
A lot of these kids are committing suicide, or at least trying to.
I saw a terrifying story about that, about a school that reopened. I can't remember the details, but a school that reopened because it had a suicide spike among its students, and they're like, we have to reopen. This was a private school. And you can't do this to kids, especially when we're also transferring it because they're not the ones at risk here at all. And so we're transferring the costs to them for the benefits for other subsets of society. I think that's fundamentally
Maybe
more.
Because there's been even some studies showing that there's no benefit towards lockdowns, and that lockdowns actually may create certain situations where people accumulate together at Walmart or Target or Costco, and therefore could even help spread the sickness even further. So there's even medical arguments being made like that.
There's studies showing that lockdowns don't work. Yeah. And part of it is this, right? So I got really frustrated by New York City and Cuomo. He ordered restaurants to close. They were at 25% capacity. They were getting people could go to restaurants, but it was limited. It was super safety measures. But the state's own data showed that only 1.4% of COVID cases were coming from restaurants. Most COVID cases were coming from private interpersonal household gatherings. Well, guess what happens when you shut down the restaurants? People have more gatherings. Like, these people actually made this worse by shutting down businesses. So not only did they slap New York entrepreneurs in the face, but they also probably made COVID worse.
You also see riots breaking out, which is talking about destroying people's lives. This Capitol riot, maybe it would have happened if there was no corona. Probably not.
It fuels them.
Yeah, people wouldn't be out screaming, destroying emotion. Things if they weren't forced to stay inside and losing their money and their income.
Trump would have won if there was no corona.
So not a bad argument.
That's a good shout. Yeah. I mean, but he also would have won it if he handled it better.
It's true. Yep. Yeah. He had an opportunity. And, interestingly, Trump relied too much on Fauci for whatever reason. Fauci, what I saw him doing was basically the media would say it, and a day later he'd repeat it. And that's why he ended up being wrong so often. He'd say things like, oh, you shouldn't wear a mask. And then 2 days later, oh, yeah, you should wear a mask. And it's like, bro, they were saying that in the news like 2 days ago. So the dude, in my opinion, for a while I was like, I like Fauci. He seems to be on the level, seems to be keeping us apprised to things. And then it kind of felt like, wait a minute, this guy's like checked out, isn't he? He's like super old. He's been there for decades. He's getting $100,000 a year. He's just sitting back going like, what did they say on CNN?
Are his eyes at half mast because he's Zen or because he's on drugs?
Neither. It's because he's checked out.
He's like this.
Like, dude.
He recently made a statement talking about how the numbers are plateauing and everything seems very promising in the United States moving forward with COVID.
Was this after the election?
Yes. Well, also Michigan, D.C., Chicago, California, New York, all of the political leadership are making announcements that they're
reopening,
going to be easing restrictions.
Luke, it's just a coincidence. It's just,
could be.
How many states was that again? How many cities?
Well, there's D.C., the state of Michigan, the city of Chicago, California, and New York.
That's reopening? 5 numbers. That's not enough to even win the Powerball.
That's only like half the country's population. The state of New York,
centers.
The state of New York and California.
But again, let's be open-minded. Could be a coincidence. Probability, who knows? Let's we could play those games at all. But I think it's important to have all those possibilities open.
But I agree with your shout though. Like Trump definitely would have won if COVID hadn't happened, because before then people were talking about the election in terms of socialism versus not, wokeism versus not,
and the economy.
Right? But then COVID, it really all became about competence and stability, and those are not Trump's strong suits.
Those are not government strong suits at all.
When Trump was giving his daily briefings, he reached his all-time approval rating in aggregate, and then all of a sudden the media panicked and then stopped airing them, saying he was lying too much. What really happened, in my opinion, was not whether or not Trump did a good or bad job. It was that no matter what happened, the media said it was a bad job. Now you have Joe Biden coming out saying in his recent speech, there's nothing we can do about the trajectory of COVID at this point.
When he said he was going to shut it down,
right,
while he was campaigning.
No, he's like, there's nothing we can do. Well, he had a plan. He said last year the travel ban won't do anything. Now he's just reinstated a travel ban.
Yeah, to people in South Africa, right?
Which actually is valid. That's actually valid.
And I'm pretty sure, and Europe and other, it's the same travel ban Trump lifted in the first place. He's doing more travel bans.
He added more countries.
Yeah. We've talked with lefties about this, and I said, basically, by what metric do you compare Trump's job on the coronavirus? If we were looking at the media, Trump did a tremendous job because they were saying millions would die, and then hundreds of thousands have died, and that's why conservatives, Republicans, when polled, were like, we're okay with where things are. Because they were told it was going to be 90% higher.
1 to 2 million was the original number.
Or not 90% higher. I'm sorry, like 10 times higher. And then it was 1 to 2 million, and then it ended up being like 100 to 200,000, and people were like, wow, we were warned that it was going to be worse. Trump must have done a good job. But the left just said, no, all these people are dead. It's the worst possible job. Ignore that. No matter what he did, it was wrong. And then people believe it. That's just it. And Trump's problem is he did have a direct line to the people with Twitter. But boy, did he not know how to use it. Huh. Look, he tweeted, and it's something we haven't seen other people do, but he didn't do it as effectively as he could or should have. Mm-hmm. And so the message was,
Jack Dorsey, can I send this message? Jack Dorsey, can I send this message?
No,
Jack
he was
Dorsey,
saying,
can I send this message? Every time you tweet, you're asking Jack Dorsey if you're allowed to send that message.
The issue is that Trump would attack people, and he would get caught into the flame war. And
that's always been his problem.
Right. A lot of people liked it. But he had an opportunity to bypass the press, and they hated him for it. And he did many times, but too often it was just inflammatory. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.